You're back tuning in to AWANI Global, and we are still at the Kuala Lumpur-Ankara dialogue in Kuala Lumpur. And joining me right now, we have Dr. Kadir Temiz, President of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies, or ORSAM, from Ankara. Thank you so much, Dr. Kadir, for joining us today. Of course, we want to dive straight into the meat of the issue. All eyes are, of course, on the US-Israel war on Iran, and I believe that's a major topic, that the elephant in the room that you can't avoid really in this dialogue itself. But just talking about the crisis that we have in our hands right now, do you see this as a major turning point for the region, or perhaps do you see this as a part of a much longer pattern that we're going to see unfold over time?
Actually, both. On the one hand, it's a big rupture, it seems to me, and on the other hand, is in a longer pattern we have seen in our region for several years of conflicts, the economic development problems or radicalization, and especially external intervention to our region by some countries, as you know. And then, today, what's happening is, in my opinion, is very critical and a very important turning point in terms of nature of the conflict. Until now, for example, if you look at the post-Second World War process, and we have seen several conflicts, and Palestinian, Israeli, but they controlled and limited conflict. Yes, we have also seen wars. For example, Arab countries come together against Israel. Sometimes some specific countries was against Israel, and we have seen this kind of conflict like the Iraq war. But for the first time in our regional history, it's becoming more regional. Unfortunately, this war, the US-Israeli war against Iran, is becoming more regional. The spillover effect we will see if it continues like that. The escalation process in the conflict is rising up, and more than 1 month now we are talking, and probably you are also observing the developments. And the latest one, Trump administration or Netanyahu is making speech about the escalation, and they're threatening. And so this nature of conflict, and first time we have seen in our region, we don't know what will be happen in the next step. And maybe for the first time in GCC or in Egypt, in Turkey's perspective, is unclear to see the future. Okay, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and even Pakistan is pushing forward the negotiation process, pushing all actors to talk about the peace and regional order. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, we couldn't reach this point. So tomorrow what will happen, it just depends on now the secret negotiation, I think the backdoor diplomacy. Yes, we know it, and there are a lot of talks between several actors, but unfortunately even yesterday night Iran rejected the US proposal, and in addition to this one, Iran proposed the 10 points, and including a lot of proposals. And okay, we will see, wait and see, and hopefully we will reach at least a ceasefire now, and then turn back to negotiation. So in terms of these, actually we are witnessing a turning point in our region.
You mentioned backdoor diplomacy, and we know Turkey has been actively playing this role in trying to avoid this conflict from happening in the first place throughout the years. But now that, as we see it developing, we see it escalating probably beyond what the US and Israel ever envisioned. What kind of role do you see Turkey playing in navigating this?
Yes, and from the beginning of war until today, Turkey tried to push conflict to a more peaceful sense. The containment of, let me say like that. First of all, Turkey's strategy was to contain it, contain to where, at least contain to Iran, Hormuz, etc. And then The Turkey's position to prevent is more regional one. I mean, the attacking the GCC, attacking to Turkey and other neighboring countries is not illegitimate. Of course, the war against Iran was not legitimate. Yeah. But in terms of containment, at least very important agenda for Turkey for 1 month. Turkey is still trying to push this containment strategy, at least for the conflict. Another one, active diplomacy we have seen from Turkey's side. Minister of Foreign Affairs Hakan Fidan visited several regional countries, including Islamabad in the recent weeks, and just talked to counterparts about the possible negotiation. And Turkey has advantage of it because Turkey can talk both sides. Turkey is NATO member, have in several years good relation with Trump administration, and now very good relation with Iran, because Turkey is against this kind of disruptions and chaotic atmosphere in our region. So we have a lot of common interests with Iran. So Hakan Fidan also told directly to Iranian counterparts. So this active diplomacy is going on, but in addition to this one, Turkey is also focusing on its internal resilience, because the energy crisis, all neighboring countries is becoming again more unstable. Now Turkey is witnessing this for several decades, and from the 1990s until today there is no any, unfortunately, regional order in our close borders. You see the Syrian civil war, how it affected Turkey, and from migration to conflict. And then, so Turkey has this experience to manage these conflicts. So internal resilience, from economic shocks and energy prices goes up. And then of course the security threat and new security threats we are expecting from this new instabilities in our region. So Turkey is taking necessary measurement, necessary steps to prevent all of this. Turkey is navigating well, and if you look at Turkey's position now, is more active and more resilient than any other countries in the region.
You mentioned some really important points there about this internal resilience, but also how Turkey is actively trying to contain this. I think containment is key here. But unfortunately, as we've seen from the get-go, from the first week of the war, this has unfortunately spilled over into most of the region, if we can say. How would you describe the broader implications for stability in the region? I mean, if we were to look at President Erdogan's efforts over the past few years to try and strategically position the country in terms of its diplomatic relations, particularly in resetting relations with some of the countries in the region, how do you think this would mean for the overall stability for the region, for West Asia?
Yes, actually, first of all, Turkey's positioning in that kind of conflict is very clear. And Turkey is against every kind of territorial problems and or territorial violation of any country, neighboring country in our region. The second one, Turkey supports the central governments. I mean, not state actors in our region, because according to Turkey's narrative, economic stability or economic development depends on the security. I know these security issues can be handled only by the central strong states. But unfortunately, if you look at the history of the Middle East, you will easily see that there's a fragile state in our region, and state structure is very weak. Therefore, Turkey for several years trying to push the strengthening the central governments and state structures in our region. See the Syria now. We are in the rebuilding process in Syria, and even in Iraq, Turkey has signed a kind of development road project between Iraq and Turkey. Now, Turkey on the one hand is pushing the security orientation in our close regions, but at the same time an economic development and positive agendas, So this is Turkey's positioning. Now, what the President Erdogan's made during this process is to make a kind of normalization in our regions. You see, in the past couple of years, there was relations heavily impacted by the past developments between Egypt and Turkey, United Arab Emirates and Turkey, Saudi and Turkey. And if you look at the past 3 years, you will see that President Erdogan's normalized relation with these countries.
Yeah.
Now we can openly, talk to Egypt, Saudi, UAE now. So it's a big opportunity for Turkey to push this peace agenda in our region, because all of the countries we can talk. All of the countries are our brothers. Now it is time to push this peace agenda in the region. Hopefully Turkey will do it, but navigating its policies towards this peace, but normal, stability in our region. But unfortunately, on the other hand, the escalation is going up. And then if it turns out to a big conflict, I mean the widening the conflict, probably will create a new momentum. I mean the new, era in our region. So we will describe it, and we will probably Turkey will find a solution to this new regional order and new alignments, new kind of perspective we will see. So Turkey just pushing the cycle of stability. I mean, the pushing Iran, even Israel, to this stability in our region, and against every kind of destabilizer in our region. Of course, Turkey has advantage of it because of credibility sides. For example, Turkey is not pushing any kind of conflict in our region. If you see Syria, Yemen, and Palestinian issue, Turkey is part of the international, agenda, and international agenda of peace, international agenda of economic stability in our region. And Turkey is still trying to talk to both sides in that conflict. Hopefully we will reach a solution on this perspective.
Just lastly, and if you can comment slightly briefly, in your view, what do you think are the possible paths this conflict could take from here? We're seeing escalation from particularly President Trump.
Okay.
Israel shows no sign of de-escalation as well. What do you make of this?
Okay, actually, if you look at the conflicts, in the beginning, it was targeting the Iranian nuclear missiles. If you look at the Israeli or US narrative of war, the objective of war was to annihilate Iran's nuclear missiles, target the proxies, and target at least some international ballistic missiles production, and I mean the Iranian military industry. So what happened then? We haven't seen any kind of success on this story. Iran resisted very well against this, and then we started to discuss a new momentum in that war. Unfortunately, now US and Israel is targeting civilian areas, some energy centrals, and some, unfortunately, schools, and some humanitarian, crisis is becoming very harsh. So what I see when you look at the conflict is going a more escalation point, and in that war is widening, and probably Iran's response will be very harsh and harsher than today. And unfortunately, there is a risk to spill over not only GCC but also Yemen. And if you look at the proxies in Lebanon, and still there is a big fight between IDF forces and Hezbollah's militants, and probably we will see this kind of proxy wars, unfortunately, in our region. Hopefully we will not, if we reach a kind of negotiation or ceasefire. But what I see, the prospect of this war is going forward, and probably we will see more escalation, but controlled mechanisms should be created by the regional actors and external ones as well.
Thank you so much for your
Okay, you're
insight,
welcome.
Dr. Kadir.